In a world obsessed with cutting-edge medicine and digital health trackers, it's easy to forget that longevity didn't begin with science. It began with observation. Thousands of years ago, long before hospitals, lab results, or biohacking, people lived well into old age. Not everyone, of course, but those who did so by living in rhythm with the world around them. They followed patterns, daily, seasonal, and lifelong, that supported their bodies not with pills, but with principles. They didn't fear aging. They studied it. And they believed that vitality wasn't something you stumbled into. It was something you earned through habit, intention, and balance. Today, we'll uncover 5 of those ancient habits, practices refined through generations in places like China, India, Greece, and Japan. They weren't secrets. They were lifestyles. And even in the age of algorithms and supplements, they still work. Let's begin with the first. 1. They rose with the sun, not the alarm. In ancient times, there were no clocks, just cycles. People lived by the light, not the calendar. The first habit that helped elders maintain strength and clarity well into their 70s and beyond was something deceptively simple. They woke up with the sunrise. This wasn't spiritual fluff. It was biological alignment. What ancient cultures intuitively practiced, we now call circadian rhythm, the body's internal clock that governs sleep, digestion, hormone release, and even memory. Rising with the sun and sleeping soon after dusk allowed their bodies to flow with cortisol and melatonin naturally. Sleep was restorative, not interrupted. Their mornings began quietly, without screens or caffeine, and they often took the first few minutes for stillness, breathing, or gentle stretching, not news headlines. Modern science confirms this. Seniors who keep consistent sleep-wake cycles, especially synced with daylight, have sharper cognition, better immune function, and lower rates of depression. Ancient cultures didn't need sleep studies to figure this out. They just followed the sun. 2. They moved slowly, but constantly. In our culture, we've come to associate health with intensity, pushing limits, tracking steps, scheduling workouts. But the second habit that helped ancient elders stay mobile into their later years was the opposite. Low intensity, consistent movement, integrated into daily life. The ancient Chinese practiced Qigong, slow, flowing motions combined with breath that kept the joints supple and the mind calm. In India, yogis used sun salutations to maintain flexibility and focus. Japanese elders walked to shrines. Greek elders tended gardens and olive trees. None of it was labeled as fitness, but all of it preserved function. They didn't wait to move. They built it into life. A slow walk after eating, squatting by a fire, kneeling during prayer, stretching at sunrise. These movements were habitual, not optional, and the impact was profound. Today, we know that sedentary behavior is one of the leading risk factors for chronic disease, especially after 60. But the solution doesn't need to be extreme. What the ancients show us is that movement doesn't need to be intense. It needs to be consistent and done with intention. 3. They ate less and better. In modern times, food is entertainment, marketing, addiction. But to ancient cultures, food was information. It was medicine. And one of the most powerful longevity habits, seen across civilizations, was eating light, seasonal, and often less than full. In traditional Chinese medicine, there's a principle: eat until you're 70% full. In Japan, it's called hara hachibu. Stop eating before you're full. Ancient Greeks warned against gluttony. Indian Ayurvedic texts recommended eating the largest meal when the sun is highest, not before bed. Elders who followed this pattern didn't just eat less, they digested better. Meals were warm, easy to chew, and eaten slowly. There was no rush, no snacking, no screens, and nearly all of it was whole: grains, vegetables, herbs, and simple broths. Fermented foods, kimchi in Korea, miso in Japan, yogurt in India, were a daily staple long before we discovered probiotics. These foods nourish not just the body, but the gut microbiome, something ancient cultures didn't name, but deeply understood. And perhaps most importantly, they ate socially. Meals were shared, and gratitude was part of the ritual. That alone has been shown to extend lifespan. Less sugar, less stress, more digestion, and more meaning. 4. They breathed with intention. In the modern world, we take thousands of breaths a day and think nothing of it. But to the ancients, breath was life, not just biologically, but energetically. And as people aged, they didn't breathe less. They breathed better. In Chinese medicine, breath was the foundation of qi, life energy. In yoga, pranayama was used to clear the mind and balance the body. Even in early Christian and Islamic traditions, breath was central to prayer, meditation, and reflection. But this wasn't about spirituality alone. It was nervous system regulation. The elders who practiced slow breathing, humming, or vocal toning were, in modern terms, activating their vagus nerve, calming inflammation, reducing heart rate, and improving digestion. Deep nasal breathing, especially into the diaphragm, improves oxygenation, memory, and immune health. And many ancient elders began and ended their day with this kind of breath practice. It costs nothing, but over time it builds resilience from the inside out. 5. They lived with purpose and community. The final habit isn't physical. It's emotional. It's psychological. And it may be the most important of all. In ancient cultures, elders had a role. They weren't discarded or ignored. They were teachers, storytellers, healers, and leaders. They didn't fear aging. They leaned into it. Purpose wasn't tied to productivity. It was tied to presence, to meaning, contribution, and connection. They lived among family. They passed on wisdom. They worked the land, prayed, taught, laughed. They were part of something. And that, more than any herb or habit, is what kept them alive. Modern research backs this up. Seniors with a strong sense of purpose and community live longer. They suffer fewer heart attacks, fewer strokes, and even experience less cognitive decline. It turns out, connection and meaning aren't soft benefits. They're survival tools. And the ancients understood this. They didn't age alone. They aged together. So what do these 5 habits teach us? They teach us that health is rhythm, that aging isn't a failure. It's a process. And the people who aged well in ancient times didn't do so by chance. They did it by practicing simple habits with deep commitment. They woke with nature. They moved with grace. They ate with intention. They breathed with awareness. And they lived with meaning. Not one of these things requires wealth. supplements, or gadgets. Just attention. Just rhythm. Just trust in something older than any health trend. The body's natural intelligence. The world is louder now, faster, more distracted, but these habits still work, especially for those of us entering a new chapter of life. So if you're over 50, 60, or even 70, and wondering how to feel better, move better, live better, look backward. Because sometimes the oldest habits are the wisest.